On this episode of Doing the Most, we're making a recipe from my new mead making ebook. We're gonna make a session Cyser. The recipe in this video is from my book, You Can Make Mead. It's available from the Kindle store, or it's available as a PDF with no copy protection. You can download that from my website at doingthemost.org/book. It is a complete guide and 20 tested, trusted recipes. So in this series, we've already made our Summer Cyser, which is a higher ABV still Cyser. This Cyser is going to be lower ABV and sparkling. And unlike our Summer Cyser, this Cyser is going to be made with water, honey, and apples, where the Summer Cyser was made using apple juice. This is going to give our Session Cyser a very different flavor profile. It's going to be much lighter, airier, with a nice smack of apple, but not like you're drinking carbonated apple juice. It's like drinking a session mead that's got some apple flavor to it. Very refreshing. In this Session Cyser, we're going to be using the fruits with the skins. Those apple skins, along with the tannin powder we're adding, are going to provide some stick-to-itiveness in that flavor profile, so that way it doesn't wash down all watery. It'll kind of cling and linger around a while so you can taste that rich apple flavor paired with the honey. We're going to be back sweetening this with erythritol. That way it will still be sweet even after bottle conditioning. The erythritol is not fermentable, so the yeast can't eat it, meaning your Session Cyser will still be sweet even after bottle conditioning using fermentable sugar to get that sparkle. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, in my book, I recommend Tosna, which is a staggered nutrient addition schedule. We're not going to be doing that for this video. I'm going to be front-loading all of the nutrients. It's a little bit riskier to front-load your nutrients with a lot of brews, but this one is so low ABV, I'm not super worried about doing a staggered schedule where I'm opening it at 24, 48, 72, 96 hours. I would much rather just dump all my nutrients in right at the beginning. So quickly, let's take a look at our ingredients. The ingredients for our Session Cyser are 1 pound of honey, 1 pound of Granny Smith apples, 1 pound of Red Delicious apples, 1 pound of Honeycrisp apples, half a gram of wine tannin, half a gram of citric acid, 1 gram of malic acid, and a gallon of spring water. We will also be using US-05 ale yeast. In the book, I recommend doing a Tosna nutrient schedule, but here we're going to front load 4.5 grams of Fermento at 24 hours. This is in lieu of doing smaller staggered nutrient additions. To sweeten this, we're going to be using 3 ounces of erythritol, and then to bottle condition this so it's sparkling, we'll be adding 1 teaspoon of granulated sugar per 12-ounce bottle. The yeast will consume that, turn it into carbon dioxide, so in 4 to 6 weeks, we will have sparkling mead. Really important for me to stress sanitizing. I like to use a no-rinse solution called Star San. It's easy to mix up, and about 1 to 2 minutes of contact time is all you need to make sure all your gear and equipment is sanitized. We want the only microbes in our mead to be the yeast that we put in there. And so sanitizing all of our gear and equipment gives us a little bit of an insurance policy that we're not going to get an infection from bacteria or mold or other wild yeasts. The bulk of the process in making this mead is chopping up fruit. So let's take a look at how this mead is made. As we begin, our honey's already in the bucket, so let's throw in our acids and then our tannin. Then our pectic enzyme, and then we'll pour in our gallon of water. Using a sanitized spoon, we'll get that all mixed up and then pitch in our yeast. Next, it's time to start coring and chopping our apples, and we're leaving the skins on so we get some of that nice appley tannin, but trying to remove the cores and the stems and all that stuff that you don't want in there. We'll get that stirred around once more just to make sure all of the apples are wet and that the yeast is mixed in. Then we'll put our lid and airlock on, and we'll be back in 24 hours. At the 24-hour mark, it is time to add our 4.5 grams of Fermento. You can see those apples have already started to break down a little bit. airlock goes back on, and we'll let that sit for a couple weeks to finish fermenting. This is an auto siphon, and while it's a 5-gallon auto siphon, it provides a pretty good visual demonstration of what an auto siphon looks like and how it works. We'll be using a 1-gallon auto siphon in this video. Basically, you pump it to create a vacuum, and as long as the mead you're transferring is higher than the vessel you're transferring to, it'll transfer using gravity. So this creates a vacuum. So pumping this creates a vacuum that sucks the mead up into the tube, and then gravity will do the rest to pull it down into that lower vessel. Once fermentation is done, we will use our auto siphon to rack that from primary into secondary. And make sure to tip your bucket at the end so you don't miss out on any extra liquid that's sitting underneath those apples. Next up, we've got a back sweeten. So we're gonna put our erythritol in. Now I'm adding that kind of slowly because you will have some CO2 still suspended in there and you don't want to create a volcano. So add it a little bit at a time until you're sure you're not gonna get some kind of eruption as you add it in. Fortunately, you just racked this, so it should be a little bit degassed by the time you get to this point. Then our airlock goes back on. We're gonna put that in the fridge for a couple weeks to cold crash and let the erythritol dissolve. If you have any trouble with it dissolving, you can use a sanitized rod or spoon to stir it up in there. About a month later, it's done fermenting. Quick read of the hydrometer shows that it ended just under 1.000, so totally dry. Once that's beautifully clear, it's time to get it into bottles. This here's my bottling wand. It is the easiest way to get stuff into bottles, and it helps prevent oxidation issues because you're filling the bottles gently from the bottom up. So basically, you connect this to the hose from your racking system. You start your siphon like normal with the valve open in the bottom of a bottle, and it'll start filling that bottle from the bottom up. Once your liquid line reaches the top of the bottle, pull up, the valve will close. And when you remove the bottling wand from the bottle, you'll have the perfect amount of space at the top of your bottle for corking or capping. Don't bottle without one of these. They cost like $3. So I put my 1 teaspoon of granulated sugar in each of the bottles, and then using my bottling wand, I bottled on top of that sugar. It will dissolve into the mead, and the yeast will eat it and turn it into carbon dioxide, resulting in a nice, sparkling Cyser. That process takes about 4 to 6 weeks. All right, time for a taste. It's beautiful. It's wonderfully clear. Nice straw color to it. Most of that color is coming from the honey. I mean, it just smells like apples. There's nothing else complicating it. No cinnamon, no vanilla, no nutmeg, none of that. Just apples and honey. It's crisp, it's light. It's hard to describe this in like a way that's really flowery because it just tastes like apples and honey. The sweetness is really light, which is nice. It doesn't overpower anything, but you still get that little sensation of honey in the flavor profile. But there's a nice big fresh apple flavor just sitting right on top of all that. Just like biting into a nice fresh Granny Smith. Crisp, a little bit acidic, nice and bright, really lovely. I hope you enjoyed this video, and for those of you who have purchased the book, thank you so much. We've sold, I think, 300 plus copies at this point, so that's freaking incredible. And I am so excited that it's out there and people are enjoying it and brewing the recipes from it. This is possibly one of my favorite recipes from the book, and I think this is the first time this one's ever been on the channel, so cheers on that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of the future content from Doing the Most here on YouTube. And until next time, happy brewing and cheers.
Homemade brews and various how-tos, everything from mead to roast, bake creation, fermentation, inebriation, doing the most.